Good afternoon. My name is Steve. This is my rock and metal life. And this journey that we're on today is going to be about a real journey that I took all of last week and into the early part of this week. A somewhat crazy road trip, crazy idea kind of thing that I did, but it had some bucket list stuff on it, and it melted together with what I normally do in the way of travel. And let me give you a little geography lesson before we connect the dots on what we're doing here. I live in Central California, in the middle of the Dust Bowl of the San Joaquin Valley. I'm pretty close to Fresno, would be the biggest city that anyone knows around here. That's me. The rest of my family lives in the middle of the country. So I got my mom living in Oklahoma, and then I got my sister living in Arkansas. And they're only a couple hours from each other. My mom's up in the northeast part of Oklahoma, and my sister's in the western, maybe middle part of Arkansas. So they're not too far apart. Okay, so there's that. Then, in my normal planning to go see my family like I do every so often, something came up that I thought was really worthwhile and didn't want to miss, and it was this Patriot Jam event in Nashville, Tennessee. And this is the second annual event for this thing, which is a day, all day long into the night jam session, bunch of bands, bunch of good times. And I didn't get to go last year at the inaugural one, so I wanted to go to this one. And turns out it's the last weekend in July every year is the plan going forward. So I got that on the calendar. Definitely going to that. No way I'm going to miss that. Really shouldn't go back there without seeing my mom, because it's just, kind of in the area, even though they are pretty far apart. From my mom's to my sister's in Arkansas is, what did I say, like a little over 2 hours. And then to get to Nashville from Arkansas, where we're talking about, that's like another over 7 hours. Okay, so if I'm going to do all that, why don't I just go to Memphis on the way between Arkansas and Nashville and stop and see what they got in Memphis? Things like the Mississippi River and Sun Records and Graceland. So there it is. We're going to do this over what stretch of time, I don't know. It turned out to be 8 days. So we flew from California. That was pretty easy to get to my mom's. And then the driving was okay. Not a big deal at all, and I'll explain why in a little bit. And the only trouble that, I wouldn't even call it trouble, but the only challenging part was coming all the way back from Nashville, all the way to my sister's place in Arkansas, which was, like I said, was 7.5 hours, I think. And then we dropped her off there, and then we flew out of Fort Smith back to the Fresno airport. And so it was kind of, a long day and a half of travel there, but nothing that we couldn't handle. And this video right here is going to be kind of a rapid fire overview of what we did along the way. Over on my Substack, I'm going to get a little more detailed with some content there and probably a series of posts. But anyway, all good with the moms. Go down and see my sister, all good there. And then we start, really even leaving my mom's, because my mom doesn't live like in the Dust Bowl of Oklahoma. The northeast section of Oklahoma is called Green Country, and it is very much that, hills and trees and lakes and everything. It's beautiful. If you guys are familiar with Greg Renoff, the guy who wrote Van Halen Rising and the Ted Templeman book, he has a place on Grand Lake, which is right next to where my mom lives. And Greg was actually the week before, Greg was posting pictures on Facebook of him and his family out on Grand Lake, which is just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So, my mom is not suffering in the Dust Bowl type of thing. I'm doing that here more than she is there. But anyway, I leave my mom's, I go to my sister's. It's a beautiful drive into Arkansas. And then when I leave my sister's to head to Memphis, that drive could not have been any more beautiful. And it was Google kind of sent me on not the main interstate. They put me on more of a direct line to go eastward across the state, and we did travel most of the state of Arkansas, and it is around every curve. It is just beautiful. It is just, yeah, trees as far as you can see. Even if there's a little town here, even if there's fast food and the things that we're used to out here, and in the bigger cities, they have all that stuff, and yet the place is just beautiful. And I'm probably going to overuse that word a lot. It's just gorgeous. I don't know what else to say. Every so often you go over a bridge and you see a beautiful lake and trees, and nobody's, you don't see litter. You don't see, dumping. Nobody's dumping their garbage along the side of the road, which they do out here. I've kind of detailed how California's lost its soul in a lot of ways. Well, Arkansas and ultimately Tennessee, they haven't lost their soul. And these were drives that were, compared to my drive to work here in the grid of the city driving, or my drives to Los Angeles, which are, they're long and straight, but there's a little bit more of a Death Race 2000 aspect to it. In my view, I'm comfortable with it, and it's not bad. I can roll with it, but you're not going to be in your lane for very long, no matter how fast you're going, before somebody comes up behind you, and then some guys, they want to put pressure on you to move over. If I see them coming, I move over every time. I'm not confrontational at all. Some people are. Some people just feel like they're NASCAR racers and stuff like that. And the absence of that on my trips across Arkansas and Oklahoma, it really stood out. I'd go for long ways on a major highway, and I could see one car way ahead of me and nobody behind me, and it was just like that for the longest time. No pressure, no rat race, nothing like that. And that boded very well to go through the hills and everything on our way to really celebrate Elvis and early rock and roll and Sun Studios, and ultimately to end up at the Patriot Jam. And this is real heartland stuff here in America. This is good stuff with a very specific vibe. And then, while I was still in Oklahoma, actually, on Tuesday, July 22nd, Ozzy Osbourne died. And it doesn't matter if you knew it was coming. It's just a big event for people in my shoes. When I watched the July 5th concert, I didn't know if it was known that this was going to happen as soon as it did. I had said to my son that, he's probably going to be gone in a year. He's had health problems for a long time. He can't stand up. Obviously, he had a lot of meds. And then I heard at the end he didn't want the meds because he didn't like how they felt. But I'm not really sure, honestly. I don't really have the lowdown on the details on the whole, the end of Ozzy's life. But when he died, I was in the car, and we had satellite radio, and Ozzy's Boneyard is my go-to whenever I have satellite radio, which I don't have it in any of my cars here, so it's kind of a luxury when we rent a car. And they did correctly. They turned the whole thing over. They went from Tuesday all the way through Sunday, all Ozzy, all Black Sabbath, all calls in for people saying experiences they had, what he meant, so on and so forth. And that changes my trip to a certain extent. Now, everybody in the car, from my sisters on, all four of us, me, wife, son, and my sister, we're all in on Ozzy. We're all Sabbath fans and understand we're going to celebrate the very beginning of rock and what Elvis did, and the folks that went through Sun Studio. And Ozzy very, very much occupies that same space for the heavy and the dark and the showmanship, the theatrical part of the show. Ozzy took all that stuff to a different level, starting with Sabbath, of course. laying down the riffs and the dark and the heavy and the subject matter that even though Ozzy's probably the biggest Beatles fan ever, this doesn't sound like the Beatles. And the subject matter, I still say a lot of people don't really understand that the witches in black masses, those are the generals or the politicians that are doing bad, evil things. And the bad things always happen to the people that have done bad things. Uh, Fairies Wear Boots is making fun of these supposed tough guys that are roughing up a smaller guy. Uh, all along the Black Sabbath uh, catalog, you've got all these heavy, riff heavy, memorable, groundbreaking songs and just sounds and the aura of it all. And the lyrics they're really good to listen to and pay attention to if you didn't do it already. So a lot of people in my category, we know what's going on there, and that's great. But to lose Ozzy Osbourne and to close that chapter of the music book, that's big. It didn't take anything away from our trip, and in fact, I won't ever be able to separate the two. The whole Ozzy situation with my trip to Sun Records and to Nashville, and that is not a bad thing. I'm very happy about that. It was because we didn't mourn and we didn't sit around and go, oh, how could this happen? Who knew? And I think probably everybody knew, just not quite this soon. It was a celebration for us. That's what it was. We weren't down in the dumps. I have that constant thing that I refer to in these videos where I'm doing this, I'm chronicling this stuff, and I'm trying to catalog my memories as much as I have of them still, because it's going away. This stuff, my memory, yes, but the music that I grew up with is going away, and I'm down to just, I could go see the Scorpions, I could see Metallica, stuff like that. I could still go to the Whiskey and see the smaller bands from the era, but it's not the same, and it's close. It's reasonable facsimile, but not the same guys. The ones that are the same guys, probably the singers especially, aren't really on the same level that they were. But you go and you celebrate the songs and you enjoy it and you love it. And God bless any of these bands that are still out there doing it. I got no problem with Foreigner with no original members, Quiet Riot, with Rudy or even without Rudy, whoever's in it. I'm fine. If those songs mean a lot to a lot of people, then they should be out there playing them, and I'm not going to get into the debate. And that's where we are now. We are towards the end of the whole cycle. I personally don't have a lot of young heavy metal bands that I'm into, and I am spending most of my time filling in my CD collection and my knowledge of stuff that from back in the past that I haven't heard. Ozzy leaving us is like an exclamation point on all that. It's like, hey, this chunk here, it's about to be in the past, is how I feel about it. And I'm not happy. I'm a little sad. I mean, I got my wonderful memories. I wouldn't trade them for anything. And I had the time of my life going to see everybody. Wasted so much money, and I wouldn't say wasted, but I mean, I threw a lot of money at this stuff. CDs, tickets, memorabilia, traveling, all that stuff. And so, big chunk of my life, it's my rock and metal life, and there goes an icon, probably second only to EVH, seeing Ozzy pass on. So there was that. And so as we traveled across Arkansas, like I said, beautiful, beautiful terrain, just wonderful vibe doing it. You pull over and you stop in a store, and it's just different back there than it is here. You walk in a store here and they might be really friendly, they might not even pay any attention to you. A little bit more of that southern hospitality back there is really noticeable for people like us coming from somewhere else. So we make it to the Mississippi River, and as you cross over the Mississippi River, it says welcome to Tennessee, and there's Memphis right in front of you. You can see the skyline, the pyramid. see the river boats down there. And our hotel was right off of the river. We got on Union Street, and we went actually directly across the street from the Memphis minor league baseball park. And that puts us like 2 blocks over from Beale Street. And so we were only there one night. And another thing about this whole trip was fact finding and information seeking. And if we ever come back here again, what are we going to do? Well, if we go this way again, which I'm sure we will next year or maybe even before, definitely 2 nights in Memphis. We just had the one night there. And we got out on Beale Street, and Beale Street was a very cool vibe. Unexpected to me. I guess uneducated maybe, but I was actually surprised by the fact that the restaurants, they had the Cajun stuff like New Orleans, and whoever's watching this probably laughing that, well, of course they do. That's what they have there. I don't know. I just didn't see it. I thought we'd get just your regular like the blues music was everywhere. The blues and the jazz and stuff like that. That was fantastic. That's the vibe you feel. And actually, Beale Street wasn't hopping so much. I got pictures of it, and there really aren't that many people out there. It wasn't, and it was a Thursday night. Maybe that's the reason. But we spent some time on there, and then I actually bailed out, and my son and I went over to the baseball stadium. My wife and my sister stayed at Beale Street, and they were there for a couple hours, and they met some cool people, and they did some good people watching. And then our whole thing was, hey, we're getting up tomorrow morning pretty early to go to Nashville, which we did. So Memphis, big plus in my opinion, and definitely go back there and spend some time there. The following day, the trip to Nashville, equally easy, equally good scenery, a little bit more traffic on the freeways once you get over there, getting close to Nashville. And that's fine. It wasn't anything hazardous or difficult or anything like that. The stress was very, very low for me. And then, Google got us right to our hotel. Our hotel was 3 blocks from Broadway. So we parked the car, and when it was time to go to Broadway, we walked. And Broadway is something. And I gotta look at it like if I was in my 20s or 30s, I would have probably thought it was the greatest thing on earth. Being completely honest, it was just too much of everything in my mind. When we went there during the day, it was somewhat tame, and you could look and you could see, oh, wow, I see what this is all about. You've got, Dierks Bentley's place, and you got Luke Bryan's place, and Kid Rock's place, and John Bon Jovi's place, and that's amazing. And it's just up and down both sides of the street, and food places, and of course drinks all over the place. And I didn't really catch it so much during the day, but when we went back later as the sun was going down, I mean, there is a band every 10 feet. You're walking down the Broadway street, and the doors open in this place, and there's the band right there, and they're bumping and thumping. And then the very next business, like right next to it, their doors open, they're thumping in there, and crazy loud in my mind. And it was just when we went back at night, you had the thing that like what we have in Hollywood and the kind of thing like maybe in Venice Beach, places like that, like the crowds on the street corners when the lights waiting for the lights to change, and the traffic's so thick that there's cars in the intersection, and then the light for the people to cross goes, and then this mob goes across in all directions. That's great. And again, like I say, it's not for me. It's great for everybody else, and I understand it is a A-list destination for anybody that likes to party. A whole actually in my hotel they had a mural that said Nash Vegas, and I'd heard that term before, obviously, and I knew that's where we were going to. And boy, that's we spend a lot of time in Las Vegas lately, and that's probably the most comparable. It was like that, and the attitude that permeates the whole place. You know, number one, celebration party, which is great, and then the other thing is people don't really care. Kind of like the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas vibe. They're not really worried about how they look to everybody else. People are really letting it fly, and again, that's wonderful. I'm glad it's there. Uh, it was just like seeing it. We went there 3 different times, and it was like, okay, that's good enough for me. We did eat at a barbecue place right there on Broadway, and that was really nice. We liked that. And then after that, and let me add to this that not exactly my kind of music. Okay, it's not the country I grew up with. It's not super twang, and I know that guitar has evolved seriously in the country music space, and the bands did sound they did like these are good rock bands. I get it. It's just not totally in my wheelhouse. At the same time, it did nothing to damage the trip or anything. I really enjoyed it. It was a great trip, and I liked being there. And my wife enjoyed it, but then her and my sister came back and said, you know, we could go to other places. We don't really have to go back there, and that's all good and fine. We only have one more day there, and it was going to be for Patriot Jam. But we walked across the pedestrian bridge that goes over to the football stadium where the Titans play. We ducked into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Oh, and at the Bridgestone Arena where the hockey team plays, the Predators, Ghost was playing that night. The Saturday, or no, the Friday night, the night we got there, because when we first got there and we walked to Broadway, we saw everybody with a lot of cowboy boots, a lot of Nashville apparel that you would expect. And then when we went there a little closer to the evening, we were walking the streets, and here came some kids, all black, goth, you know, that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess they got everybody here, you know. And then still later, when we got our stuff and we went back to actually go up to Broadway to eat, that was where we saw all the people lined up, and I looked up on my phone and I was like, Ghost was here tonight. So, oh yeah. So there we have that. So covered a lot of the gamut here for the genres in Nashville, and it was very live, very happening. Like I say, Beale Street was a little toned down, and I imagine it probably is a little bit livelier on the weekends. This thing was lit. It was on fire, and God bless it. I'm glad it's there. That being said, the outlying areas of Nashville, it was more of what I was saying about Arkansas and before. It just really nice scenery. The drive's really easy just to go from here to there. Got all the same concrete jungle things that we have here, but they don't have 14.3 billion people all trying to drive the same road at the same time, and it's a big difference. And just having grass out here and just having the trees around, it's totally changes the whole vibe compared to what we have here, the concrete jungle and there's no scenery till you get out of town, that kind of thing. So anyway, that leaves us to the actual destination of this whole thing, Patriot Jam. It was at a really cool bar, place where they got drinks, they got arcade games, they got pizza, wings, and this thing started about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it went till about 10:30, something like that. And we had country music, and we had southern rock, and we had rock and roll. We had ragtime piano, musical satire. The only thing we did not have, which was the main band I went to see, was not able to play. It's a band called the Sunset Saints. They were going to do 80s metal, and if you check out last year's Patriot Jam, they were there, and they've got it on YouTube, and they ran through the good stuff, the stuff that really fits in my wheelhouse. And I was looking forward to that, but they suffered some illness, and their guitar player wasn't able do the event, and it was like a severe sickness. Uh, so that's just the way it goes. I mean, once a year, and it has to happen. I hated it for the band and for the guy. The show went off well. The show went off really well. It was out on the patio, and the weather back there, we've got close to hundreds here right now, and I'm pretty okay with it. They got, at the time, they had 90s and the humidity, and that's a different feel. That's a little bit more pressure, and that's a long time to be out there. I actually retreated to the hotel for about an hour and a half in the middle. I kept it on my phone and saw who was playing, but I just went back, and I just wanted to eat. We had food back there, and I wanted to take a shower and like change, and then I went back to the venue to see the end of the show, and it was fantastic. Great show, good fun, but I saved the Memphis, the Sun Records. Obviously, we went to Sun Records while we were in Memphis. I saved that for the end of this whole thing. So we didn't just go to Beale Street and that baseball game. We actually went to Sun Records when we first got to Memphis. And I'm telling you, that was, for somebody like me that listens to a whole lot of 50s stuff, and I grew up with my dad blasting the Jerry Lee Lewis records in our living room on the weekends. And I've got quite a bit of 50s stuff. For me, Eddie Cochran and Bill Haley, these are two of my really big favorites. But like I say, Jerry Lee Lewis and of course Elvis, these guys they're giants. And to me, they don't just sound good, like if you adjust for the context of time, they sound good. And Jerry Lee Lewis was a wildfire. He was maybe David Lee Roth of his day, I don't know. But he was a powerhouse. And Elvis Presley, of course, as we know, at age 18, he walked through the doors and said he wanted to record, and Sam Phillips wasn't there that day, so on and so forth. But this is where all this took place. And they got a tour for $20 a head, and it's just a tiny little sliver. It's like one of those streets that has a street coming at an angle, so it makes a wedge on the corner. And it's a little wedge-shaped kind of building there. And when you first walk in the door, there's a gift shop, and it's just got all this stuff, magnets and stuff. And I got Elvis's driver's license, and it's all super cheap. I put a whole handful of these guitar picks and stuff like that. A whole handful of this stuff on the counter, and I was like, oh, that's $18. It was hardly anything. And so that's the front area that you walk in. It's just merchandise. When the tour starts, you go upstairs, and they've basically got a whole bunch of memorabilia from the era, the 50s, behind glass cases, and the tour guide tells you the stories of all this stuff. And they've even got they actually took the radio booth from station from back in '55 that blasted the records. They put it in this up here. They preserved it when they tore down the hotel, and that's there with all the equipment. And after that, after the little history lesson and everything, you go downstairs again into another room, and this is the studio. And it's small, but it is a working studio. There's people recording there every night these days. And you've got the control room up above, and you're standing in the actual recording space, and they've got X's on the floor where Elvis and his bandmates stood, and you can see there's an indentation where the stand-up bass was. It made a dent in the floor, and I guess they all just put it in there. And so I don't know if you can see this, but this is the $1 Million Quartet, the famous picture of Elvis, Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis around the piano. Well, that's right here in this room, and there's a piano in that spot right where that picture was taken. Now, it's not the actual piano that's in the picture. However, it is a piano that was donated by Jerry Lee Lewis in the 80s. His personal piano that he donated, and one of the keys is all damaged from him burning out cigarettes on it. Uh, and all this is, I don't worship human beings, but this is hallowed ground in the context of the music that I've spent my whole life just running around in my head and taking it with me everywhere I go and putting all kinds of time into enjoying it. And it just really, really hit me when the guy was telling the story that I don't know. It sounds foolish, I know. I'm saying the same thing over and over, but like Great Balls of Fire that my dad used to crank up on the record player, and we'd hear it in the house, and we lived out in the country, so it didn't matter how loud it was, so that was great. Those echoes, all of that is bouncing off of these walls here in the Sun Studios. That hit me pretty solid, you know. I've driven by Sunset Sound, where Van Halen did their records. I haven't been inside. I don't really. I see pictures of where the magic took place, but I haven't been there. This one here, I walked in. Oh wow, this is really interesting. This is really neat. And then the longer I stood there, and the more the guy talked, it was like, wow, those guys were here. Elvis came through the door, and at the front desk, the lady said, "Yeah, Sam's not here," but ultimately, Elvis gets into the studio, and he ends up recording with Sam in there. And I guess Sam didn't really like what he was doing, but then Elvis is all agitated, and he starts doing "That's All Right, Mama," just like nervous energy, and Sam was like, "Whoa, that's something. Let's," yeah. And just stuff like that. I mean, we can sit here and say it all day long. You can watch documentaries and read about it, but it all took place in that room, and we're standing in that room, and I'm so glad it's preserved, and it is still a recording studio, no matter the history. It didn't stay the thriving studio it was all the way up until now. There's twists and turns along the way, but it was really impactful for me, and I really enjoyed it. And it's great for me to always go back to the beginning. And I can't listen to the 50s stuff all the time. I go on binges with it, and then there's times where I'm in a real Judas Priest, or a real, especially like a Megadeth, something like that, and I'm really into that stuff. And I don't exactly want to put on Eddie Cochran or somebody like that. However, when the time comes and I do throw something in, or if it comes on, it comes right back to me, and I'm really into it. It can't be overstated how important the events that took place in this building were, and it was the highlight of the trip. Other than the Patriot Jam, which I looked forward to for so long, it delivered. It was perfect. But the Sun Records, I mean, that's just something. Kind of, I felt like it was a once in a lifetime thing. I felt like if I was gonna go do that, I had to get my sister involved. And it turned out it was as bonkers for her as it was for me, so that's fantastic. The travel was great. Everything was great. The people were wonderful. The Patriot Jam folks were great. The people getting out of the Ghost concert at the hotel, they were great. They were just bragging about how great the show was. Everything was really good on this trip, and I enjoyed it. I would highly recommend to anybody that likes the early days of rock and roll, go see that Sun Studio tour. And there's plenty to do in Memphis besides that. As far as Graceland, the pricing on Graceland was nuts. As far as you could pay something like $85 to not go in the house, just to see the plane and the vehicles. And then it was over $100 to see some of the house. And then that was the one thing. We drove by it. We ultimately drove by it, and we saw it, and we saw the gate and everything, and that's fine. One of these days I'll probably end up inside there. But for this trip, for all we had going on over 8 days, and there's a little bit of money component, there was a little bit of a time component, we just set that one to the side. Sun Records more than made up for it, for me, in my opinion. Now, maybe I'll say something different once I've been inside Graceland, but at this point, the trip couldn't have gone any better. Even Ozzy dying, don't want him to die. Don't want any of that to come to an end. But it made it a celebration. It really was fun and enjoyable, and you got to just hear over and over the people calling into Ozzy's Boneyard. You just got to hear everybody had the same cool, fun experiences that I had, and it was a celebration. It wasn't just for me personally. It wasn't anything to cry over. The guy got his money's worth and much, much more. He got to be huge, and then he got to be more huge. He got to define a genre, gave it to all of us, put himself on display so we could all enjoy everything he does and decide what we think of it. So I'm just really, really happy about this trip, and I enjoyed it. And I will definitely be going back to Nashville next year for the Patriot Jam. And I would like to hear anybody else's thoughts on Memphis, Sun Studios, Graceland, Patriot Jam, Ozzy, Elvis, anybody. Just got anything to say, just go ahead and put it in the comments.